Alright guys, TacticalRab again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. And the final domino fell last night. Officially, Kenny is out of Los Angeles Thieves. The most surprising of these moves so far, it's got to be said. When the offseason first began, the Envoy, the Drazah thing, the Octane retirement were being rumoured, but it was expected that Kenny would probably stay. That's no longer the case. A legendary team, it's got to be said, world champions in 2022, completely blowing up their roster here. And they've explained exactly why. John Robinson reveals from 100 Thieves perspective, they lost $2.5 million during their World Championship winning year, explaining why they need to be more financially responsible, and also Nadeshot giving some hints as to exactly what roster they are intending to build. Very much intrigued to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I'd greatly appreciate it. Big one today. Here's Andy Miller, of course, from the NRG side. Noticing some 100 Thieves stuff over there in LA, and we're going to get into a lot of that today. There was also some reaction from Nadeshot himself to Scump's new stream room. They call this like a $50,000 set. I'm not exactly sure where all that money goes, to be fair. I know Nadeshot was roasting these kind of like clouds on the ceiling. I thought was pretty entertaining. But Nadeshot obviously has his own issues to think about and worry about in the moment with regard to the future, the immediate future of 100 Thieves and Los Angeles Thieves. It was interesting in this podcast, and I definitely recommend checking it out if you guys have got a spare, hour or whatever, just if you're interested in the business side of esports, because it was very interesting. And I'll share, of course, a few clips that are particularly relevant here. But if you guys are fans of Thieves in other esports, expect this trend to continue, as I'm sure you could have well imagined. And yeah, Nadeshot reckons I'm leaking every CDL roster in the next 48 hours. However, many of these teams, they simply don't know. And I don't really know if Thieves know necessarily. I would say in the next couple of weeks they'll have a good idea, but they've got lots of options, because the guys they're targeting aren't going to be top targets of other teams and organizations, right? They're going to be young players, they're going to be players with high upside, and ideally paired, I think, with more of a veteran player. We'll get into who that might be in the coming minutes here. Also, though, another confirmation. We haven't had many confirmations in this Rostermania saga. We do have one from Boston. I'm surprised it's taken so long, actually, for this, just because it was a long time ago now where Nero, Vivid, and Awakening were dropped by Boston. Kremp has just been released, so he was still around until now. I guess there were some questions. Would he still be there on the Academy roster? I guess technically he could still be, but I thought Kremp was, when he first came in, he was actually quite impressive, especially on those, what was it, aLLeY control maps that he had some real standout performances on, but towards the end of the year had a couple of bad performances. On LAN it wasn't quite the same, so they're going down a different direction. And as I say, maybe he'll be on the Boston Academy again alongside Doug Sensor Martin. We'll see about that. There was also this that a couple of guys pointed out to me. This is on the website for the NYXL, which is kind of like their overall branding that has the subliners and the Excelsior underneath it. And on the subliners page, you guys, okay, this isn't fully on screen, but you guys, I'll share in a second for you guys. These are all the things you can get. And they have specifically jerseys for Skies, Kismet, and Hydra, all of which have sold out. Now, I'm guessing that at some point they had a Priester one here. They may not have done, and I tried to look on the Wayback Machine and I could find a screenshot of this page from back in March, but back then they didn't have any of these jerseys available, so I don't fully know. But it would feel a little bit strange if Skies, Kismet, and Hydra all have their own jerseys you could get from the website and they never put a Priester one up. I would say that they probably did. That's more likely than not that they would have done, but I'm not exactly sure. I've never been on this website really before, but now it's not there anymore. So, there's no Priester jersey on the website. So either there never was, or they've just removed it, even though it was probably sold out. So I don't really know what's going on there, but we're seeing a lot of confirmations from teams, especially Thieves we'll get into here in a second, but still nothing from the subliners about Priester being gone, despite the fact that we believe that is almost definitely going to happen at this point. So yeah, just strange stuff coming out of the New York camp again. It's funny how it works, right? Because last off-season was absolute chaos with New York. They did the flank episode, Duriel, Crim, Hydra, it was all going on, and then this season they went for the Priester option. They became much more settled as a team. There was like no internal drama, but all of a sudden the season ends and we're back in business, baby. The Subliners are back at it again, and we'll see where Priester ends up going over the coming days. We've got to talk Kenny, because for Thieves fans this will be a bit of a dagger, and for good reason. Octane retiring was a big one, but he's still on Thieves, right? 100 Thieves, he's still a content creator over there. The relationship is maintained, and I would be surprised if Kenny, after his playing days, doesn't return to Thieves and be like a content guy for Thieves. I think it makes sense, in the same way that many of the guys that were previously on OpTic returned there after their playing days are over. I think Kenny is so intertwined with Thieves' branding, especially from back in the Black Ops 4 days. If there was a Thieves Hall of Fame, actually, is there a Thieves Hall? I'm pretty sure they did one, did they not? I'm pretty sure they already put Octane and Kenny in there. So anyway, I think that's happened at least. And this is, of course, in the Black Ops 4 days. But you get the picture, right? Kenny and Thieves just have felt so intertwined for so long at this point that when he initially returned, when LA Thieves came around again, I think it made a lot of sense. They eventually got Octane back off that Seattle Surge travesty of that year or two, and now Kenny's leaving, which just feels so crazy to think about. But when the season began, when the off season began, the rumor was, all right, Thieves, Envoy's going to get poached, Drazah's going to get poached, Octane was going to retire, but we didn't talk about it at the time, but that was the rumor going around behind the scenes. But Kenny was going to stay, that was the talk. All right, Kenny stays, they try and get insight in CleanX off of Toronto, they pay for Pred and build a really competitive team. Turns out that's not happening, and Kenny has a better offer for, straight up more money and a financially better offer on the OpTic Texas side that we believe that he's taking up here. So a really difficult one for Kenny, and just for Thieves in general. Been a long journey, lots of fun times, so many people to be thankful for, and I think that Kenny might be back. Whether that's as a player or whether that's post-career as a content creator, we'll see. But for now, Kenny's going to be gone. And at times, his personality really felt like the lifeblood of Thieves as a team, and it's difficult for many fans, right? Because, there's nobody there anymore to root for. As Octane says, all my boys are gone. Yeah, if you're a fan of Octane, he's still on 100 Thieves, right? But, man, it's difficult to, if you're a Thieves fan, to really look at this and think, well, what am I going to think next season? What team are they going to build? Is it going to be anything like what they've had over the last couple of years? Probably not. And Josh tried not to let Kenny go, right? All these great reaction memes that I'm sure we can see used for the coming months. And just to note it then, right? The World Championship winning team from 2022 have now all officially left. As I said before, the champ's curse always comes to get you eventually. Doesn't matter if you manage to win an event after winning champs as they did for the first time in COD history. It's always going to come and take you down at some point, and it's taken them down emphatically. I was convinced this team would break apart this off-season. 2 years is a limit for so many different teams in COD history, but you've got to say, they are one of the, top 5, top 6 longest teaming rosters ever. The longest will be the OpTic Dynasty, the Complexity Dynasty, the FaZe roster, of course, from the Cold War into the Vanguard season, couple of years there, and then you look at the FaZe team, actually, during the Jetpack era, was actually maybe even longer than, because the Complexity Dynasty wasn't even for that long, but I guess you're considering the Clay and the Karma period in the same way that for the OpTic Dynasty you should really consider the Nadeshot and the Karma periods, but obviously Cole won a lot in a relatively short space of time, but 2 years for a team is a long time. Seattle Surge did it, Thieves did it, but at the end of that time frame, things are going to almost always break apart, and that's what's happened here. The question to me is, where do Thieves go down in terms of all-time rosters? Because as I've just mentioned, OpTic Dynasty, Complexity Dynasty, the FaZe team, Cold War, especially that season, right, was emphatic, and they're one of the best teams ever, no doubt. And then you get to the FaZe Jetpack team, like with Clay, Zuma, Attach, and Enable, of course, and then you get to, Thieves can't be far away. Like, they might be one of the top 5, top 6 rosters that have ever been formed. Maybe even higher than that, depending on your perspective, but they're all going their own separate ways, and this is the reason why. So this is a really insightful podcast, and I'll share a couple of moments here from Nadeshot and John Robinson and others discussing exactly how much money they lost in that Vanguard season, and it's kind of incredible.
I don't think that this era of 100 Thieves Esports is going to be like this forever, where we have to be very stringent around our spending and be as creative as possible with younger talent and making bets on new players that want to come play for an established program and really start their career off on the right foot. But for me, I just can't shame the players for going to other teams with more lucrative offers and a better structure for the team that they think can win next year. Our backs are against the wall in terms of what we're able to spend. So now we need to get creative with younger players, and see if they can turn into the superstars of tomorrow. And I think that's actually fun, trying to be the underdog again for the first time in a while.
This offseason that's the decision point for LA Thieves. This was actually like a really simple and straightforward challenge that we were facing. I'll put it out there. We lost $2.5 million on our Call of Duty program last year when we were the world champions. Would I do that again, knowing that there was a world championship on the other side? Absolutely. 10 times out of 10. I'm glad we did that for our community and our brand and everything else. But at the same time, if you do that every year and you continue to do that, we're going to run out of money and nobody wants to fund that. And then that's the end of 100 Thieves. And I think that would be the biggest disappointment for us and for our fans and for everybody else. It's not good for esports. It's not good for anybody, right?
Yeah.
So I think at some point we had to make that decision like, okay, we just cannot continue to lose this type of money and we need to get to a much healthier place.
You know, we're going to do our best to pull this back in over the next year and continue to help 100 Thieves grow the right, responsible way. Make our investors proud, make our board happy, make our community happy. I think all of these things can be done in unison together. It just takes time where one has to be higher or lower on the priority list than the other. And that might suck and maybe not be the best way to convey it, but I do believe that. I think 100 Thieves is going to be in a really, really good place over these next couple of years. And we appreciate your patience. Good luck to all the players on the CDL team who haven't announced yet whether they're going or staying or whatever, but you guys will see over the next couple weeks. And we're going to put together the best roster we possibly can for 2024 and give you something to cheer for, root for, and live and die for. So appreciate y'all. Thanks for listening.
So my question is that $2.5 million, is that the net loss, as in they lost $2.5 million, or is that they lost $2.5 million, but they also made some profit and return from sponsors and from the league as a potential percentage of, let's say, the YouTube rights deal revenues, which apparently isn't much, but is at least something I'm guessing the teams get from those respective deals. What this really boils down to is the publishers in esports are the ones making the bank. The teams are struggling hard. If they're losing $2.5 million, I mean, even to break that down, let's say the $2.5 million was the negative side, they also had a positive side, so they didn't lose net that much, but maybe they did. Okay, how much do they pay the players? Let's say 300k each, I don't know, per year, plus the coaching stuff and everything around that. That might be $1.5 million plus. Then you've got all the content stuff going on. Then you've got all the activations you want to do. Then you've got actually getting to the events, the hotels, the travel, all of this. And yeah, I guess you could think about it that it might well add up to $2.5 million. So, but that's a crazy amount of money to spend, right, in a season. And this is why the predominant spending of these CDL teams is the salaries. And fundamentally, we will come to a time over the next few years, and I think all the teams will inevitably have to go through what kind of Thieves are currently experiencing, where they have to bring their costs back in line with what they can actually afford to achieve. Back in the day, when OpTic were first coming up, when these teams were first coming up, they wouldn't spend more than they could make in sponsors and all this. The players would all stream to supplement their income, and the organizations would pay the players what they could afford to make sure they were breaking even at bare minimum. Over the last few years, with all the VC money flooding in from 2018 onwards, it became an absolute mess where all the teams were chasing to just sign all the best players, spending ridiculous salaries, and it's kind of gone all the other way. And other teams in the CDL are still doing this and will still do this for some time. But I think that eventually they will have to fall back in line, and Thieves clearly think their moment to go down that route is now. So yeah, pretty crazy. And as I've said, right, it's the publishers, it's the guys that own the esports leagues. They're the ones taking all the money. They're the ones that own the things. And the poor teams at times are struggling hard to make this work, to such an extent that a legendary brand like Thieves is effectively going to have to release all their players because, well, they were UFAs anyway, but they all have better offers because other teams are offering more money. So Nadeshot gave some implications as to what they're going to do, looking at young talent with high upsides. I think a good way to go about this would be to have, you know, one veteran presence. And I mentioned yesterday Clay. I would love to see that personally. We'll see what happens over time with either 2 or 3 young talented guys. Maybe aBeZy, maybe Linz. You bring in a couple of those guys from the Awoba Bobs. That could be an interesting option. There's plenty of players out there that have high potential upside, and it will be interesting for Thieves fans to see and to follow the progress and be that underdog, because Thieves have been expected, ever since they really came around and started winning in Black Ops 4, to be a championship contender, to win every single series they play. That's not going to be the case anymore. It's a rebuilding process, and I expect that other teams like Boston and like Toronto, and maybe even FaZe at some point over the next couple of years, may have to go through a similar process. But Thieves obviously think that time is now, while they invest into other elements of their business that eventually will hopefully be able to subsidize greater investment into their esports program. But yeah, this is not something that will just be affecting the CDL team, but also be affecting the other esports teams that they have. But that's where we're going to leave it for today. Very interesting to hear their perspective, and Nadeshot definitely giving some indication as to why they just can't keep Kenny around, and as to why their roster next season will be very different to what we have been used to from Thieves over the last several years. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.